beast! Ah!
Hello and welcome to another episode of Not the Bees, the Nicolas Cage filmography podcast. I'm Elizabeth.
And I'm Megs.
And this week we watched 2013's Joe, starring Nicolas Cage and Ty Sheridan. We open on a teenager and an older man on train tracks. The teenager is telling this man, presumably his father, that he fucked up and some others will beat him up and he deserves it. The man backhands the kid and then climbs up a steep hill where two men are waiting for him. They do indeed beat the shit out of him. We cut to Joe sitting in the cab of his truck listening to a weather report while it's pouring. The newsman says the rain will get worse. Joe leaves the truck and tells his foreman and workers to pack it in for the day due to the weather and then drives everyone, about 10 people, to the local store to drop them off and says if the sun comes up, he'll see them in the morning. Then he drives home, does some accounting, and goes to bed. The sun does come out the next day and everyone is back to work. They're poisoning trees for a lumber company. The company can't cut them down unless they're dead first, so Joe and his crew kill them with some homemade poison so the pine trees can be planted. During the shift, the foreman, Junior, finds a snake. Joe grabs it to keep it from his workers. The young boy from the beginning walks into the group and wants to see the snake. After Joe lets the snake go, the boy, named Gary, asks if Joe will hire him and his dad. They just got to town and need jobs. He's not afraid of working. Joe decides to give him a shot. Gary does well and gets along with the crew. We see Joe move around the community. It's a small town and everyone knows everyone. The only store is the gas station. There's a madam's house and one of his friends kills a deer so that Joe helps show him how to butcher it. He's clearly been in some trouble in the past, but it's also clearly a respected member of the area, and he has his enemies. A man with a scarred face named Willie takes a shot at him with a shotgun as he's leaving his friend with the deer. Willie drives to a bridge to throw the gun off, and Gary and his dad are at one end. Gary is trying to get his dad to get up so they can go get groceries on the little money that he made the day before with Joe. But his dad is drunk and waving a bottle of vodka around talking about breakdancing. Gary approaches Willie and asks if he can drive him and his dad back to town. His dad isn't feeling well. At first, Willie says sure, and Gary asks why he tossed the gun. Willie fashions himself a philosopher and goes on a tirade about having flown through a windshield at 4 a.m. once and now he doesn't give a fuck. He tells Gary about how a man slapped him at the bar in front of his friends. When Gary asks who he's talking about, but Willie just repeats that if he ever slaps him again, he'll kill Joe and get in Gary's face like he's trying to intimidate them, and backs off, laughing, and asks if Gary has any sisters. Gary warns him not to disrespect his sister. Willie grabs him up, but Gary pushes off of him and then beats the shit out of him and tells him he's not just a fucking kid, and then he walks away with his dad. Back at home, Joe does some solo in-home surgery to pull the buckshot from his shoulder, and then a couple of younger ladies show up with a six-pack. One of the girls asks what happens, and we learn that Joe slapped Willie at the bar. The girl asks to stay with him because her mom's boyfriend is back in town. Joe agrees. The next day, Gary and his dad show up to work. Gary does well, but his daddy is not cut out for this, and he and Junior have words. When Joe takes them both home that evening, he pays them and tells them both that there's no more work with him. The dad tries to take Gary's money, and Joe takes it back and gives it to Gary. Gary begs Joe not to fire him as he gets into the truck and leaves. Joe watches Gary walk away and then watches his dad smack him around and take his money before he drives off. Joe goes home, but Gary ends up following him on foot in the rain. Joe lets him in, and his girl gives him some dry clothes, and Joe tells her his daddy hit him when she remarks on his bruises. She admonishes Joe for not getting involved, but Joe says he can't get involved in every little thing. When Gary returns, he says he came to talk about a job. His daddy doesn't care if he works, but he does. Joe says he'll run him home. They stop at the store and Joe gets into some stuff. His girl tells Gary not to take shit from anyone, and they join Joe. He tells Gary that once it dries up, to meet him here at the store in the morning. He can come back to work. At home again, Joe can't sleep. He tells the girl that he hates that there's nothing he can do. He's not a hero. Restraint keeps him from hurting people and going to jail. He does what he's told and he feels bad for his workers because they work like dogs and getting old. Like this kid just shows up and works so hard when his life is such shit. How nothing matters. They sleep. One day at the start of work, Junior tells Joe he needs a new truck. Gary asks if he does get a new one, how much does he want for this one? He likes it. Joe says $900. They shake on it and get to work. Meanwhile, Gary's dad has been roaming the town for some time. One day he sees another drunk man shambling down the sidewalk with a bottle of something and follows him to the train tracks, down the tracks into a tree by the river. He makes up a story about being lost on his way to a hospital to see his wife and then beats the man to death with a metal handle for something that he finds in the dirt. And then he takes the man's bottle of wine and whatever he has in his pockets. Across town, Joe is at the local bar tying one on and thinking about Gary's predicament when Willie walks in and starts running his mouth, egging Joe on, and Joe takes the bait. He throws Willie's head into the counter, smashes a bottle, and holds it to his neck. It smashes the rest of it and tells the bartender to call the cops before someone gets killed, and then he leaves to go to the local brothel. Problem is, the madam has a dog that he does not like. She isn't there, and the girl that is can't really control it. So he leaves, goes home and gets his dog, drives back and sets his dog after the madam's dog so he can go upstairs and get a quick blowjob. When he leaves and calls his dog, the madam's dog is dead. As he's driving down the highway, he gets pulled over. He gives the cops a bit of a chase, but another car is a little way up the road, stopped across so he can't get past. Joe stops the car, lets his dog run out off into the field, its face covered in blood. The cops have their guns drawn, and Joe is belligerent about not having anything on him and daring them to put the guns away and arrest him. Back at Gary's house, his dad has shown up and immediately starts being shitty, saying Joe isn't going to replace him and wants Gary's money. He rips through a bunch of stuff until he finds some money and leaves after a brief scuffle where Gary tells him he will kill him. Joe is in jail. He's handcuffed to a bench and he's crying. He begs one of the cops for a cigarette, but the guy says he's about to get out anyhow. At the discharge desk, the sheriff, Earl, tells Joe if he goes back inside at almost 50 that it's going to be a lot harder on him than it was when he was in his 20s and that he needs to get it together. At home, Joe makes some calls to report his dog missing. Gary shows up because the guy at the store told him about the fight and arrest. He asks Joe about when he was in the big jail before. Joe tells him he assaulted a cop. The cop accused him of doing something with the girl after he beat up 3 cops. One of them went for his gun and said he was going to kill Joe, but ended up blowing off his own kneecap. Then he asks if Gary wants to go look for his dog. Gary drives Joe's around in Joe's truck. Joe teaches Gary about being cool, and they drink beers and talk to the neighbors about the dog. Gary tells Joe he thinks the dog will be where Joe left her when the cops pulled him over. Lo and behold, the dog is waiting right where Joe left her, and she even lets Gary greet her, though she's not a friendly animal. Joe drives Gary home and gives him his special lighter to help him get the girls. On the way home, needing a cigarette, he sees Gary's dad walking and offers him a lift for a light. He tells Gary's dad that his son is a good worker, but Gary's dad immediately starts talking shit, saying he's not seeing any of the money Joe says he's paying Gary. Joe says he's smart, he's probably saving it, he's buying his truck. So Dad starts talking shit again about how Joe and Gary are stupid and the truck is garbage. Joe snatches him by the collar and tells him if he doesn't like the truck, he can get the fuck out before he knocks out the rest of his teeth while his dog barks in the truck bed. The work continues. Gary's dad doesn't seem to be around very often. Joe goes over to get Gary one day, and we learn that the home Gary and his mother and sister are living in is condemned. Joe tells Gary he should just leave, but Gary says he has to stay. They have a family problem, and he has to take care of his sister, Dorothy. We also learn that Dorothy used to speak, but she's been mute for years, and no one knows why. In town, Willie approaches Gary's dad. He's been looking for him since Gary beat him up. Willie says there's a way they can be friends. We cut to a car lot. Joe hands his old keys over to Gary. Gary tries to give him the $900 they agreed to, but Joe says to keep that. He'll need it for insurance. Gary thanks him and drives off. On the way home on the highway, a cop tries to pull Joe over for some reason. Joe stops, and the cops ask if the car is now his because it doesn't seem to have tags, and then they try to get Joe to take a breathalyzer, so Joe gets pissed and drives off. When he's finally forced to pull off, Joe gets out and they get physical, but Joe backs off quickly, saying he didn't do anything, he's not drunk, he's just not the one. At his house, Earl is waiting there for him. They talk about family for a bit, then Joe says the cop is new, was looking to start something. Earl says he'll have him push papers for a bit to learn a lesson, but he's more concerned about why Joe seems to want to go back to prison. His girl had left. He found the note when she and Earl walked into his house. He tries to call her once, Earl leaves, but there's no answer. Then he goes to the bar and has a weird flashback to a girl he used to know. Later that night, Gary shows up asking to use Joe's truck. His dad did something. Joe makes him come inside. Gary says his dad beat him and threw him out of the truck. He's going to kill him. Joe says to stay, bring his mom and sister. They'll be safe with him. Gary says he has Dorothy. Him and the man with the scarred face he beat up on the bridge. Joe makes Gary tell him where they went. Joe says to wait outside. They'll go together. Joe gets his gun and they leave. Gary's dad took Dorothy to a wooded area near that bridge and plans to sell her to Willie and his friend. Joe shows up right before anything happens. He tells Gary to take his sister and leave. Tells Willie's friend he doesn't know him and to leave while holding his gun on Willie's face while he makes excuses. Gary says he'll go get help and drives off while his dad watches from the edge of the bridge. Joe tells Willie to look at the moon, but just before he fires, Willie's friend has pulled a rifle and shoots Joe in the gut and the leg. Joe goes down, but shoots the friend dead. Willie gets up to run, but Joe stops him, and Willie says he went through a windshield at 4 a.m. He ain't scared of shit, and Joe shoots him. On the bridge, Joe tries to shoot Gary's dad and misses. Gary's dad asks if Joe, stumbling and bleeding out, is his friend. Joe raises the gun and shoots, but it clicks empty. Gary's dad climbs up the bridge and jumps off. Joe slumps down against the wall as lights flash in the distance. Gary got the cops. Earl and Gary walk to where Joe sits bleeding. Gary hugs him, but when he pulls back, Joe is gone. Looking over the bridge, Gary sees his father's body, his head cracked open on the banks of the creek below. Next, we see Gary in Joe's new truck with his dog. He drives to meet with the owner of a pine tree farm. He gives Gary a similar rundown about plant seedlings as Joe gave about killing them. They knew each other. And if Gary worked for Joe and liked it, he'll do just fine here. And when can he start? Gary says right now, and they walk off together to plant pine trees. The end. Megan.
Yeah.
What did you think of this movie?
I actually really like this movie. It's got 87% on Rotten Tomatoes for a good reason. This movie is really well acted, but it's also a really sort of accurate depiction of life in the South in like areas that are colloquially known as the boonies. Like there's nothing around for miles. There's no jobs to be had anywhere. The only like source of shopping in the entire town is one place. It's a gas station, grocery store, deli, whatever. Like it's where they meet up every morning before they go and kill fucking trees. Like there's nothing out there. They're in the boonies. There's just creeks and woods and a gas station. And they're not far from a town, but it is a bit of a hike. So it's just, it's a really good representation of very, very small rural towns. The bridge, in fact, that's so like pivotal, like it's such a device in this movie is wooden. Like it's a covered wooden bridge. It's just I think this movie is gorgeous. It's beautiful. What do you think of it?
I did not like this movie.
No? That's okay.
I did not. I do not like movies about child abuse and neglect.
Oh, yeah.
And I was not in the mood to watch a movie about child abuse and neglect. And that is all that happens in this movie is child abuse and neglect. And a great scene of Nick Cage's butt when he's fucking the whore. But it just it is well shot. The cinematography is gorgeous. The acting is fantastic. Ty Sheridan knocks it out of the park.
Mm-hmm.
But like,
You're absolutely right.
It's icky. It's icky, and I didn't like it.
Yeah, that's fair. That is an absolutely fair take. This is a very icky movie. There is a lot of really horrible shit that happens in it. There is a lot of child abuse. There's a lot of neglect. There's a lot of addiction. I mean, like, I think his father's character's name is technically, like, his character name is G Dog. I wasn't gonna make you say that in the write-up 1,000 times. He was just nameless.
Why does he, like, the scene where he kills the hobo near the river?
Yeah.
He, like, I get it. He does it completely out of desperation and wanting the liquor.
Yeah.
But, like, he was already a disgusting human being. You didn't need to make him a lethal, disgusting human being.
No, you
Um,
didn't. You didn't.
the movie did not sit well with me. It's not sitting well in my stomach.
It's a difficult watch. That is fair. That is fair. I had seen this movie before, so I was prepared for it. But you're right. It's not an easy watch. Like we literally start the movie, like the introduction is Gary and his father sitting on the train tracks, probably having been ousted from the last place that they were living in, right?
Yeah.
And and Gary is telling him about himself, like, hey, this is your fucking fault.
So, like, at the end of the day, what I want to say about this movie is that Joe is not a role model.
No.
His life was spiraling out and he wanted to die. That's why he's picking fights with cops. That's why he took his dog over to kill the madam's dog.
Yep.
That's why his girl left.
Mm-hmm.
He was looking for any excuse to go out. He just happened to find a noble cause at the end. And
Yeah.
that's saving Dorothy and, in a way, saving Gary.
Yeah. I mean, you're not wrong. I am sorry that it gave you the ick, but it is an absolutely fair feeling to have because you were not prepared. But again, I do just want to say that I think it is a very accurate representation of what life is like in these very small rural southern towns. Like that's what it's like. Unfortunately, alcoholism is rampant. Abuse just in general to your neighbors, your friends, whatever, is just a thing. And like I also had a very hard time the entire movie with the dog. The entire time.
He leaves the dog chained up outside, and the dog goes under his trailer home to live.
Yeah. And she has a whopping like 4 feet of chain to move on.
Yeah.
That's it. That's it. So like it's like no wonder she's aggressive, right? Number one. And like there's at one point when they're talking about when they find the dog, when he and Gary find the dog, and Gary remarks on all the scars that she has, and he goes, "Yeah, but all the other ones, they're dead." And I'm like, yeah, it's hard to watch, man. There's a lot about this movie that is very difficult. This is a hard movie to watch. So I agree with your assessment that you don't like it. That's fine. That's fine. I think I just dissociated from the emotion of it and just looked at it purely from the aspect of a movie. In that aspect, I think it was very well directed. I think it was very well written. I'm not a fan of the pacing because a lot of like
the commercials interrupted the pacing. I'm sure that the pacing
there's
is
that too.
fine if you weren't interrupted every 15 seconds by a commercial on Pluto TV.
It's just the style of like storytelling when it comes to like that, like these kind of films. Like there's a lot of space in between because there's a lot of time given to like nature and surroundings and stuff like that, getting like aerial shots and like dissolves and stuff. It's fine. It's fine. It's fine. It's just, it's not, it could have been done in 90 minutes. Is all I'm saying. There's a half hour of stuff that doesn't need to be there.
What would you rate this movie?
I feel bad because I think that you want to give it a sort of a lower score, which is also fine.
This has got to be up to you. This has got to be up to you.
Okay. I think as a film, I would probably give it somewhere around like a B minus. Is where, I mean, I think that it's beautiful. I think that the cinematography is gorgeous. It's very, very colorful. I think the characters are well developed. I think it's acted very well. I am also, again, not a huge fan of the content, but the representation is accurate. So to me, I feel like that is a fair grade to give it. It's not an A to me, though I do like it. What would you give the caginess of this movie?
I think Nick Cage is good in this. I think the acting in this movie is very good. It's another bearded Nick Cage performance.
Full on beard.
I don't know. I think I'd give him a B.
I'm fine with giving him a B. It is a bit of a subdued performance. It is very good and it is very emotional in the sense that it's clear that he is trying to restrain himself at every single moment of his life. I think that his character is someone that just has a lot of violence in him because he sees the injustice of the entire community that he lives in, and he does what he can, but there's nothing he can do to fix any of it.
Yeah.
And there's a helplessness to him. So like you get the acting in this movie is insanely good, is all I'm saying. So I mean, yeah, like I think that's a B is fair. I think a B is a good.
I would give Ty Sheridan an A.
Yeah, I would give Ty Sheridan an A. I would give the guy that played his father also an A. I 100% believed that he was an alcoholic murderer. I absolutely believed his character. The guy that played Willie, I absolutely believe that that is who he is. Like, the acting was superb. Could have done a little bit more from Nick Cage, but I agree with your assessment.
Well, I think that's going to do it for us this week, kids. As always, thank you for listening and paying attention to us. We really appreciate it. We are on social media on Instagram at Not the Bees Pod. We're on YouTube at Not the Bees Pod. We are in all of your podcasting catchers. We are on Patreon, if you feel so inclined, at Not the Bees. But we will be back next week with another thrilling installment. That's going to do it for us now. I've been Elizabeth.
And I've been Megs.
We'll catch you next time.